It's an evening of live art creation and musical collaboration that hints at things to come. Winnipeg Theatre Projects will be taking over the Forks this evening to share the myths that shape us, a precursor to their upcoming production, Prophecy, at the Rachel Brown Theatre in the Exchange District next month. Both projects center around worldviews, how they impact the world around them, and how they remind us of the different mythologies that shape people and societies. Sam McLean is the Managing Director of Theatre Projects Manitoba and joins us in our Classic 107 studios this morning to tell us more about the myths that shape us. Good morning, Sam.
Good morning.
So, what can audiences expect to see and experience tonight at the Forks?
Well, it's something very special we're excited to share. We've been doing for the past 2 seasons these promotional events that are in relation to, but not specifically anchored strongly to a production we have coming up. So in this case, we have a live art creation night where we have a visual artist who will be painting live in a studio space that we have arranged at the Forks. And it will be a kind of catered event. We'll have snacks and drinks and an open kind of flow atmosphere of conversation and engagement where people can watch the painting being made, while we also have a live cellist who's also the sound designer for our production, who will be playing improvised music based off of the vibe of the room, the action and work that the artist is doing, and the artist will pick up some of that too. So it's both of them in a kind of art conversation, which is really cool, that we also have an additional canvas and our guests can come and they can engage too as much as they feel inspired.
Yeah, so I was about to ask this because there was an opportunity for guests to come and create alongside of the two artists that you just mentioned. The visual artist, I understand, being Jackie Travers.
Yeah, Jackie Travers, who's an Indigenous artist based in Winnipeg, who has a great career of making kind of women-centric work. And our play coming up, Prophecy, which runs in March, is from the female perspective of the characters in the Iliad, the Trojan War story. So we're trying to kind of couple the two ideas together of having a story that's about the myths and the experiences lived of the characters in that story, and taking a wider worldview of kind of Western mythology and beyond to have this Indigenous perspective on mythology. So we have more than just what's present in the show represented in the work that gets put together.
And then there is the musical side of this collaboration as well, featuring cellist Nathaniel Felicitas.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, why was it important in this project to have music, especially something that does not involve words, as I understand it, enhancing the understanding of mythology and how it shapes our lives?
There's a very cool aspect in having Nat work on this show, specifically because she'd found a piece of music that's one of the earliest recorded pieces of sheet music. It's something that I think was back one of those Pompeii kind of discoveries, where it's some notes written for an instrument that can be adapted to cello. So it's a simple basis of just a few notes, but it has been adapted by Nat into a bigger piece for the show. And Nat's such a talented improviser and cellist that she can take in and kind of play and jam with just the world around her. So in the case of the show, as sound design goes, that tone and that bassiness and that kind of discordant sound that you can create with the cello can really reflect and amplify a lot of the feelings that you get from the content in the play, to kind of make both more powerful. And that same thing applies really well to this live art creation, because it can set and it can adapt to what the pace and tone of the event is, and can really draw people in beyond just watching somebody making something, is that they can really feel like they're experiencing something.
I love that word that you used just now, discordant, to describe what the cello will be doing. And it strikes me that it's quite fitting to then use that to describe different mythologies that people might hold in their lives. Mythologies that, when put together, are not necessarily unharmonious, but definitely might have a bit of a crunch as they attempt to reconcile how they shape our lives. How does, as you're approaching the myths that shape us, and then Prophecy, as we've mentioned, next month, how does Winnipeg Theatre Projects define mythology, and then how do the performers maybe interact with that definition?
I think when it comes to mythology, there's so many different takes on it because a myth can be a rumor, a lie, or an
Right.
idea or an ideal. And that's something that's very interesting about the source material. The Iliad is the idea of this huge piece of Western literature that talks about this imagined but maybe historically couched real event of this massive war, this end of this nation, and trying, in the case of this play, to put it in the perspective of just a few individuals who are kind of overlooked. The women in the play are the central figures, but in the Iliad at large, they're pretty background characters. They have so much that they experience and have happen to them, but they're just kind of there. And it's really a chance to give more of a voice to that. That's very interesting. And I think it's something when it comes to if you were to value everyone's perspective at the same level, you have so much content. You always end up having to kind of pick and choose what it is you focus on. It's why you can take so many different classic works and reimagine them from one other person's perspective in the room, and you get an entirely new story out of it.
So we've talked about this idea of collaborating with artists kind of from outside Winnipeg Theatre Projects' main sort of sphere on something like the myths that shape us. And you've mentioned just before we went on the air, this is something that you've been doing in other projects as well, to gain not only to gain different perspectives, but also to gain different engagement from different types of audiences. How does tonight's performance impact the upcoming run of Prophecies? Because I understand that like the things that will be created this evening will actually inform the run of Prophecy coming up in March.
Well, that's a big part of why we're doing this one is we wanted to get a broader perspective and incorporate kind of a land acknowledgement aspect into the work that's being made, because often when you begin plays, we have preamble, and this show we've wanted to try and minimize that as much as possible so it can have a very natural start where people will take their position, the action is already kind of silently in effect on stage, and then we'll just commence organically. And so we wanted to have this Indigenous perspective from Jackie on myths, history, land, and the relation between the themes in the show is a visual art piece that will then be put in the lobby outside of the theater entrance, so that as patrons come to the show, they'll be able to see and engage with the piece of art. And then once they're in their seats and they have their show programs, they can actually read about it a bit and get more influence that way. That's such a big piece with visual art, is how what you read about it can very much change and color your perspective on what you see. So the idea that people can see a piece, think about it, sit down, and then get more context, and then see a show that will even expand in different ways on some of the same themes is just a very cool way for us to kind of do a little bit more with something that is, in a sense, just such a small gesture. It's just a little something before the show actually starts, but it can mean a lot. So.
Yeah. In some ways, the community has already interacted with the production that you are about to share before it even goes to the stage at the Rachel Brown Theatre.
Especially because we'll have that second piece that the audience members for the Myths That Shape Us will interact with. So we'll have two pieces in the lobby that they'll both be able to see and then get the context for from our write-up.
So you're still over 3 weeks away from the opening of Prophecy, as we've been talking about. How does that public interaction from the Myths That Shape Us that takes place tonight, in both its forms that we've just been discussing, how does that inform the creative process in the room as you go into creating Prophecy in the next few weeks? Because that will obviously not exist in a vacuum, given the invitation that you've extended to Winnipeg theater goers for this evening.
That's the very cool thing about the fact that we also have the sound designer for the show. The play Prophecy is in rehearsal right now, so they're actively making it, changing it, blocking it, and doing all the things that come together before it's ever in front of a live audience. And having one of our key designers there at this event and experiencing it and seeing what gets made, taking it back to the rehearsal hall and still being able to make more additions and changes based off of that is a really big aspect of the cool kind of living creation that goes into making a play, and is also a big part of the cool live aspect of this event. or we're going to have people who come out to see it will maybe normally not attend something like Prophecy, might be more curious to see more of what it is that they got to experience in this event.
This event, The Myths That Shape Us, begins at 7:30 tonight at the Forks. Cost is $15. More information up at our website this morning, classic107.com. Sam McLean, thank you so much for joining us in the Classic 107 studios to tell us more about the myths that shape us.
Well, thank you very much for having me.